happy to answer your questions as we go through. And you know what, talking about, where did our screen go?
Do you want the lights off now, sir? Don't tell me it ran out of batteries. It was on all this time.
Well, it should be good for hours. Do you have an extension cord just by chance, Steve?
Okay,
and we'll get started here anyway.
Okay, do you want the lights off soon afterwards?
Yeah, that would be great, just
so
in this area. So, nothing like having a technical issue right out of the gate. That's really strange. I use this thing all the time, and that charger actually does last for hours. But I just got off the airplane, so maybe it was on. Maybe it was on during the plane ride or something today. So. Yeah. Up until just moments ago. So we'll get this set up here, and we'll let Steve plug us in, and then we'll get started. That's what I get for saying, no, I don't need your plug-in. All right. All right, we're going to get started here anyway. So the topic tonight, stress, anxiety, and depression. Is anybody here because they need to be? I always feel this need to have to ask people how they're doing, but this is a topic I really feel like I can't ask that question because it's about stress, anxiety, and depression. So hopefully you'll allow us to laugh a little bit and joke a little bit tonight, even in the middle of a topic that I know is serious and can be challenging. But it's my goal tonight that you will start to understand a little bit more about what's going on inside your body when you're feeling stress, anxiousness, and then maybe even feeling towards depression, because even though sometimes it's hard to know all of that, when we know it, it's easier to find that solution and find a way to get out of that. So we're going to kind of dive into some of the things that happen inside the body. Yep, you're back. We're back on. Thank you very much. We're going to be able to get where we need to be on that with that.
I'll just move the speaker. That's the worst thing.
I'm so sorry. This is completely my fault.
I'm so sorry. Where are you going to stand?
I'm staying anywhere away from that, so we're good.
So why don't I bring the wire around this table on this side? Sure, you want me to?
No, it's just fine. I'll stand right over there, and that way I'm out of the way. It'll be just fine. Okay. And we are back.
You turn the lights off? You know which one? Yeah. You know which one? Okay. And you don't know which one? This one. I see. No. Let me.
Nothing like being prepared. You know what else causes stress? I'm gonna let you guys. Not being ready. Okay. We're up and running. Thanks for being patient with me. All right, so if we look at the category of emotional health, definitely, as we look at this topic in America, we're at a point of crisis. Every neural disease, doesn't matter which one you want to talk about or choose, every single one of them is on the rise. Depression is currently the #1 disability in America, which doesn't seem possible to me, but it is. 40 million Americans have clinical anxiety, and the rest of us are just anxious. And then what goes along with that are addictions. It's important to know when we're stressed and anxious and feeling symptoms of depression, we tend to eat or find addictive behaviors that help us along with those feelings. And so it's just important to understand that that's a possibility. And we'll talk about a little bit about sugar cravings tonight along with this topic. So before we dive into it, just tell you a little bit about myself. That's my mom and dad on the top right there. They opened a health food store in the Chicago area in 1961. So I've literally grown up in the aisles of a health food store, not that different than this store. And so this is really a comfortable place for me to be. And I've had really just an incredible opportunity, even as a young guy through my adulthood, to help thousands of people that came to my family store that weren't feeling good and find a better way of life. And so specifically for my family, they started a health food store because my mom was really sick in the 1950s. And specifically, she was struggling with anxiety. So this is a topic that's an important one to me. And the anxiety that my mom felt was the type of anxiety that was overwhelming. It was the type where she might feel normal one minute, and then the walls and the ceiling were caving in, and it was kind of debilitating anxiety. And when you struggle with that, day in and day out, it's exhausting. And so then she would struggle with fatigue, where sometimes by 11 o'clock in the morning, she had to lay down and take a nap because she just couldn't make it through to lunchtime. And then as time went on, then there's feelings towards depression, right? So all of this stuff kind of snowballs. And for my mom, in the 1950s, she was a young lady in her mid-20s, newly married, and none of those feelings made sense to her. She didn't think she had any reason to be anxious. She didn't think she had any reason to be depressed, but she was having those feelings. And when she went to the doctors to find out what's going on with her, certainly at that time, they really didn't have any answers, especially, for a young lady who was trying her best to explain to the doctor all of the feelings that she was having. And they were emotional feelings, and you know what? They weren't consistent. They changed every once in a while. So it was really hard to kind of put words to exactly what she was feeling in her body. And so often the doctors would suggest that, you're stressed, just take some time off. If you relax, you're going to be better, And my mom knew that taking time off wasn't going to fix what she was feeling. She knew those feelings were real. She wasn't making them up, although there were days she felt like maybe she was a little bit crazy. But she was also convinced there had to be an answer. There's no way that she had to live her life like this. There has to be a solution. And so she was persistent and went from one doctor to another. And as the years went by, and somebody one day suggested that she change her diet. That didn't really make any sense to her that day, but my mom was willing to try anything. And so the diet that was suggested was an elimination diet, where basically you kind of eliminate most of your foods and go down to a very, very simple diet. And then you just start to journal and pay attention to how you're feeling when you eat each food. And about every 5 days or so, you'll introduce a new food back to the diet. So kind of eliminating foods to find out what might you react to and kind of going from there. My mom went into this diet with zero expectation that this was going to do anything. She felt like her diet was pretty good anyway. There's no way that these changes can really do anything. But within the week, my mom started to feel dramatically different. And that was shocking to her. It was the first time in her life that she made this solid connection between the food she put in her body and the way her body responded. My mom was a school teacher. She loved to learn and loved to teach. And she dove in from that moment to learn everything she could about food and the way it was grown and harvested and processed. She was fascinated that one seemingly healthy food would make you feel wonderful, and that same food would make you feel terrible. How can that be? And so as my mom started to feel better, and then she started helping all these other people that she met, because she was one of those that just couldn't be quiet when she had an answer for somebody, especially an answer that she knew was going to help somebody else. And so they opened a health food store really with the whole idea of being able to feed their family, and at this point a bunch of friends that they had made along the way. And in the south side of Chicago in the 60s, you couldn't find food that was grown without pesticides, and certainly the idea of organics back then was not a big movement, but they were just looking for food that was grown without pesticides. And so that literally is the environment that I grew up in. And actually the store on the bottom left there is in Lansing, Illinois. I still own that store today. So I've got a few health food stores. Literally have spent many, many years in a health food store. And it was out of that environment that I started REDD Remedies. I started REDD Remedies in 2005 for a lot of reasons, but probably one of the biggest drivers was just the idea that so many of the products that I was seeing were marketing driven and not results driven. And so we started out to do things maybe a little bit different. And so REDD is actually a word that means to put in order. So REDD with 2 D's on the end is not a color. It's a word from the early 1800s that means to put in order, to tidy up. So that's our mission at REDD Remedies, is to help you put your life in order as it relates to health. So there's 3 things that we pay attention to kind of on a high level at REDD Remedies. One is results. Seems kind of silly that a supplement company would even talk about that, because again, you would think that everybody is focused on results. But the young lady who's pictured there is Stacy Littlefield. She has her undergrad in biology and a master's degree in herbal medicine. She leads our formulation process at REDD Remedies. To have somebody at that level lead a formulation process of a dietary supplement company, believe it or not, is pretty unique. Very few companies have somebody at that level. Even if you see, brands that might have doctors that are speaking, generally those doctors are not the formulators. They're generally just a marketing head. And so our products are 100% designed to work. We won't make anything if we can't get results with it. And we're a formula company. Everything we do is a formula designed to solve a problem. And so it doesn't matter what category we're looking at, whether it's gout that Steve talked about earlier, or whether it's our products for emotional health, or joints, or anything like that. What in the world is that? Boy, am I having technical issues. All right, so everything is designed to do three things. They're designed to nourish, support, and create balance in the body. So we're going to nourish the body specific to the issue that we're addressing. Because we talk about it that way because even with herbs, we can choose to push or stimulate your body, or we can choose to nourish and support the body. Nourishing and supporting is a much better approach, and it's a long-lasting approach. So if we use gout as that example, we use herbs that nourish the kidneys in that formula, because gout at its core is a kidney function issue. So what our industry tends to use is stimulants or diuretics. So a diuretic will work for gout, but it's not a healthy thing, right? If your kidneys are stressed, why would you stimulate an already stressed organ? We're going to nourish and support the kidneys and get just as good a results, but it's long-lasting results, essentially helping your body do what it's supposed to. And then we take this step back and we support all the body systems that are involved in that issue, because the body is whole and connected. There's never anything that happens in one area of your body that doesn't affect the rest of it. That's just the way our bodies are. And so again, we're going to take a step back and make sure we support everything involved in that specific issue. And then ultimately, at the end of the day, it is our goal to create balance in your body. Balance in the body is perfection. It doesn't get any better than balance. And I know sometimes we're looking for more performance, better performance, right? We're looking to do more than we've done in the past. But in the body, homeostasis or balance is as good as it gets, right? And when we're in a state of balance, there is no symptoms, there is no disease. We have tons of energy physically and mentally. That's what we're after when it comes to dietary supplements. And so that's how we formulate our products. We also spend a lot of time on purity because we want to make sure that our products are clean and pure, right? We live in a toxic world, and I use herbs from all over the world. And I will admit, I happen to really love traditional Chinese herbs. And how many of you are afraid of herbs from China? A little bit? Right? Actually, it's pretty common. I find that, especially, we tend to be afraid of herbs that we've not heard of before. It's probably the main thing. Where does that come from? Is it safe? Who is using that? Especially when it comes from China, we have this image of Beijing in our mind, which is, obviously very polluted. But 90% of that country is remote, mountainous, beautiful, pristine, and they have a history and a culture that appreciates and understands herbs like no other. So we're working with farmers there, families that have been harvesting herbs for generations. And the care that they give to that, and the way they grow, and the time that they harvest, and the way they process is honestly like second to none. So we have some great partners, but we're a long ways away from China. So I also believe in accountability. So, right, so we build relationships, we build trust, but then we hold accountable. So we put together a testing protocol that's also, second to none in the industry. I don't know anybody else that has a testing protocol as extensive as what we do for every individual ingredient, and then again in our finished products, where we test for 955 toxic compounds, 779 pesticides. That does include glyphosate, which is the Roundup pesticide, heavy metals, endocrine disruptors, industrial chemicals, polymers, all kinds of different things like that. Just to give you an idea of how unique that is, our testing bar chart is on the right. The European Union is in the middle. Actually, the European Union has a pretty solid testing protocol where you have to test for 520 toxic compounds. So that's as good as it gets in the world as the European Union, which is about half of what we do. And then the U.S., unfortunately, is on the far left. There is no solid standard for what safety means in a dietary supplement here in the U.S. The FDA does regulate our industry, by the way, and they do mandate that dietary supplements are safe. They just don't define what safety means. And so that's kind of up to the industry to define that. And then the third thing that matters is community. And part of the reason this is important to me is because in a context of community, a couple of things happen. REDD Remedies is a family-owned company, and so because of that, I have the freedom to design formulas that I want, the way that I want, in order to make an impact for all of you. And we can spend the time in the testing protocols and things that we want without, some investment group asking, for a return on their investment by a certain date. But I also believe in community in the context of an independently owned health food store like this. There is no other place that I know of that you can have a conversation like this about your health and the issues that you have going on, and then surrounded by all kinds of healthy products that can really help. So many people that I've met have really changed their lives in the context of a local health food store. So we're excited to work with them. All right, let's dive in a little bit. One of the things that's really important, and again, this might seem a little bit like common sense, but sometimes common sense is good, right? Before you look for a solution, we need to make sure we understand the problem. And I find especially in our bodies, sometimes we jump to a conclusion or a solution a little bit too fast. And if we've got the wrong target, we might hit that target, but we aren't going to feel better. It's really important to make sure that we have all of the right targets in place. So I kind of like the image of an iceberg when we look at the bodies, because an iceberg shows about 10 or 15% above the water, which represents the symptoms that we feel. So those are the things that we can feel or see in our body. And that's the easy part, right? We can see it and we can feel it. The difficult part is the 85% below the waterline. What in the world is going on in your body that's kind of bubbling up and creating those symptoms in you? And the thing is, we can have, 4 people in this room with the same exact symptom, and you might each have a very different core issue going on, kind of bubbling up and creating that same symptom. So we need to spend a lot of time right here, and this is really one of the places that we spend a tremendous amount of time making sure that we understand the issue in depth before we go about trying to solve that problem or get the right solution. So it's important that we understand the problem. One of the things that I see as a core issue in pretty well every health issue is stress. Stress is involved in not just our emotions, but sinus and respiratory health, immune health, cardiovascular health, body structure in total. I mean, literally stress, and far too many of us live in chronic stress. This is involved in almost everything. It's something we have to pay attention to. So I want to make sure we're talking about the same things, because I'm not just talking about, hey, I've got a stressful day, a stressful job, a stressful life. But stress, by definition, is the body's reaction to a change that requires a physical, mental, or emotional adjustment or response. All right, I gotta let that soak in for just a quick second. Essentially, a stressor, by definition, is anything that moves your body out of balance or out of homeostasis. Okay, and then your body is required to make an adjustment to bring it back into balance. That's a stressor, okay, by definition. And so what I want us to understand is that there is a cost to that stress. If your body wants to be and needs to be in balance, and something moves it out of balance, your body has to spend energy to bring it back, and there's a cost. The thing is, our bodies are amazing at doing this, absolutely amazing. Our bodies come out of balance or out of homeostasis all day long in little ways, and we don't even realize that our body's making these corrections to come back in. Our bodies are really remarkable at doing it. But if that stress is significant enough, and if we don't alleviate some of those stressors, this cost of stress can build. So this cost of stress is known as the allostatic load. It's the only big word I'll teach you tonight. The good news is you won't have to use that word anywhere else in life, so you don't even have to remember it. But essentially, the allostatic load is the price that your brain and body pay for being forced to respond to these stressors, okay? And like I said, this load can build over time. So if it's just a stressor, or if it's a temporary stressor, it's not a problem for us. Again, our bodies are amazing at that. But if we live in chronic stress, that's where we have a problem, because those stressors will build. No different than if you've got a car that has one tire that's low in air, right? I mean, you can go down the road and it's really not a big deal. I mean, you can't keep your hands off the wheel, but you only need 2 or 3 fingers on that wheel to keep that car going straight. It's a little bit of a cost to that stress, but it's not a problem. But if you don't tend to that, that tire's going to get a little lower and a little lower, right? And sooner or later, you've got both hands on the wheel in order to keep that car going down the road. That's essentially a good image of what happens with the allostatic load in the body. The real issue, though, is when we combine chronic stress with inactivity and a high sugar diet. That's a recipe for disaster, and I see far too many of us living in that. And with activity, by the way, I'm not talking about everybody has to have a gym membership. I'm just talking about activity. Are you moving? Are you going for a walk even a couple of times a week? We have to move and we have to be active. And then looking at our diet, so we're going to talk about that a little bit later as well. And so if we look at this allostatic load, the medical community has proven that the allostatic load can cause a number of different issues in the body, right? So the medical community tells us that allostatic load will create permanent changes in the brain. Just a little side note, I don't believe those changes are permanent. I think with the right nutrition, the right situation, we can actually rewire and kind of fix some of those quote unquote permanent changes, but this is what the medical community tells us. So chronic stress leads to chronic pain. Did you realize that you can experience pain without any physical damage in the body just because you're stressed? It's possible. So our emotions are absolutely tied to our level of pain that we experience. Anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, cognitive decline, and that's kind of the world we're going to talk about tonight. But there's a lot more going on in the bodies when it comes to stress. Stress can damage the cardiovascular system and actually create essentially any cardiovascular issue that you can even imagine. Stress is on par with smoking when it comes to a cause of heart disease. Stress can affect our blood sugar. Stress can cause inflammation in the body. Of course, it disrupts sleep cycles. We all understand that. The next two things I want to talk about real quick. Stress suppresses the immune system and diverts energy away from digestion. So I find that people are getting sick a lot these days. As a matter of fact, we've got 4 different immune products in our line, and each of them work on the stress response in the body. And the reason we do that is when you go through a stress response, your body's natural response is to suppress your immune function. Okay, and the reason your body does that is your body has to prioritize its use of energy. All right, you have 100% of the energy available. You can't make 105 or 110%. It doesn't work that way. Your body is going to prioritize its use. And so during the stress response, your body wants to find energy from somewhere in order to put in your muscles and your brain to focus. And it's going to take that energy from the immune system and digestion, as well as a number of other places, but those two in particular. And so if we're going through a stress response for 30 minutes or an hour, it's not a problem. But if we live in stress, our immune system all day, every day is functioning down here. So the best way to prevent sickness is actually to use some herbs that modulate stress. That's actually the best way to prevent sickness, because your immune system is going to come back up to normal just by helping your body work through the stress response. And the same thing with digestion, right? When you're going through a stress response, you don't need to digest that meal that you just ate. You need that energy in your muscles and in your brain. So again, we're focused. Digestion can happen later. But if we live in stress, we're going through every day not digesting the food to the full potential that we ought to be digesting it. So actually to the point where I believe if you're angry, stressed, upset, the best thing in the world that you can do is skip that meal. Think about that, okay? And then we just end up feeling like this some days. All right, let's go into some solutions. Thanks. Nobody walked out. Thank you. That's fantastic. Sometimes with all the bad news, you never know. There's a group of herbs that are known as adaptogens. How many of you have heard of the group of herbs known as adaptogens? Anybody heard that word before? To be honest, very few people that I've met have heard of that. So an adaptogen is not the name of an herb, it's the name of a category of herbs. Okay, and it's a small classification, and it's starting to become a little more popular. So I'm going to make sure that you understand what an adaptogen is tonight, because these are some of the most powerful herbs that we can use to help us with stress, all of the things that we've just gone through. And so an adaptogen herb has to have 3 qualities in order to meet this classification. Number one, it's an herb that's non-toxic. So, and I would argue that herbs are really safe, and they are. Right? People don't die from herbs. It doesn't happen. If it did, wow, the media would have a heyday with us. It just doesn't happen. People don't get hurt by herbs. But that doesn't mean that herbs are non-toxic. So this is just a different level of safety. Okay, so all adaptogens are absolutely safe for anybody that would consume them. And number 2, they have a non-specific response in the body. And so this simply means they have a unique ability to work anywhere in your body, head to toe, any organ, any body system that might need help. okay? That's really unique. While a lot of herbs might have a long list of things they help with, very few herbs have a true ability to help anywhere in your body. And so an adaptogen has that ability. And then number 3, they have a normalizing influence. And so what this means is they have a unique ability, whether that organ or body system is overactive in you or underactive. An adaptogen has a unique ability to bring that back to center, to balance. Okay? So when you put those 3 qualities together in a single herb, I call them herbs that are smarter than we are, right? Because we can't possibly know all of these things that are going on in your body, kind of below the waterline, if you will, if you're looking at that iceberg. So the 85% that we can't see and we can't feel. These adaptogens will go to work finding all of those little issues that you have. And again, it doesn't matter if that little issue is an underactive issue or an overactive issue. The adaptogen is going to work to bring that to center. So if you look at all of the different healing cultures around the world, every single one of them has one or more adaptogens, and they use them every day throughout life, which makes sense, right? Because we're going to have different stressors every day, every week, every year throughout our lifetime. And so all adaptogens are remarkable at helping us with this stress response. Stress physically, emotionally, or environmentally. By environmental, I mean toxin stress. So the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food, clothing, cleaners, on and on and on. So adaptogens will help protect our brain and our body against those stressors. All of them help protect the cardiovascular system and the liver. They're radioprotective, which means they fight against radiation. Actually, the one time you should not use an adaptogen herb is if you're on radiation therapy for cancer, because to some degree they will minimize the effect of that therapy. But that ought to be an indication that the rest of us should be on adaptogens every single day, because there's radiation all around us. And they're all immune system regulating. The important thing about that is if you think about autoimmune disease, we don't want to stimulate the immune system, right? Adaptogens don't stimulate anything. Adaptogens create balance. So if an adaptogen is going to create balance in your immune system, that means they're safe for somebody with an autoimmune disease. So if you're using it for that purpose, just ensure that what you're taking is a true adaptogen, okay? We make a formula for autoimmune issues as well, so they've got that on the shelf. So let's dive into this topic tonight. There's 5 products that we're going to talk about. And in this category, we partnered with Dr. Gregory Jantz. So when I mentioned that Stacy, our master herbalist, draws from a host of professionals depending on what category it is that we're studying. In this category, we're working with Dr. Jantz and his team. And the reason this was a wonderful thing for us is Dr. Jantz is a psychologist, but he's not a typical psychologist. When you go into his office, he doesn't have couches around, and it's not just conversations. He actually opened a partial hospital a little over 30 years ago north of Seattle. And so it's a clinic that specializes in treating people with anxiety, depression, eating disorders, and chemical dependencies. It's the type of place that you can go and stay. Usually a stay is somewhere between 2 weeks and maybe 2 to 3 months on the long end, depending on what it is that you're working through. But they have over 70 professionals from every vocation that you can imagine that care for you. And so we were able to work with this team to make sure that we understood the 85% below the waterline. So what is going on in Dr. Jantz's patients that's causing the stress and the anxiety and the depression and the desire to eat and all of those types of things? And what are all the things that we need to make sure that we address for those individuals? And so out of that came these 5 products. The first one is Enjoy. Enjoy is our formula for depression. We talk about it in terms of uplifting the mood and creating emotional strength. Enjoy can be used not just for depression, but it can also be used for those of you that are on the lighter end of that spectrum, right? Oftentimes we might go through just a season that's tough. I'm from Chicago, and like you, in the wintertime, we don't see the sun for a few months, right? So we're all a little bit depressed in the winter. This is a great seasonal affective disorder formula. So you can use it for that 1 or 2 or 3 months that you might need to throughout the winter. Or again, like I said, maybe it's just a tough season you're going through, as well as that individual that maybe wants to be on or needs to be on it for a much longer period of time. So Enjoy is going to work on stress. That's one of the most important things that it's going to do, right? Because it's stress initially that kind of leads towards those depression feelings. The way that this formula works, we're starting with some really basic nutrients. We're starting with folic acid and B12. And so we find that people that tend towards depression are deficient in these B vitamins, and the purpose for these B vitamins is they're essentially a catalyst that start the chain of reactions necessary so we can have balance of neurotransmitters in the brain. So we've all heard of serotonin. We know that if you have depression, you're deficient in serotonin. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter. So this formula focuses on serotonin, but depression is not just about serotonin alone. I mean, the brain is much more complex than that. So what we want to do is give you the building blocks necessary to create all neurotransmitters in balance that you as a unique individual needs. That's the nice thing about doing this. If we go back to our formulation philosophy, when we're nourishing, we give your body what your body needs, and then your body is able to do with it what it needs to. All right, so when you get those foundational nutrients, it can help us regardless of where the deficiency might come in. And so these B vitamins are your catalyst to start the chain of reaction. So it's kind of like if you want to have a campfire at night and we've got wood and we have paper, but we don't have matches, right? You need a match to start the fire. That's what your B vitamins are. Your B vitamins are the match that starts the chain of reaction so we can create neurotransmitters. That's the purpose. And then we also add vitamin D, another foundational nutrient. We know that vitamin D is also involved in neurotransmitter production. We know there's vitamin D receptors all over the brain. We know this is our happy vitamin. There's all kinds of reasons that we need to have some vitamin D in here, so there's a nice foundation of that. And then we step a little further down the chain of reactions with 2 amino acids in this formula, L-tyrosine and 5-hydroxytryptophan, otherwise known as 5-HTP. These are your direct precursors to serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine. So these are the foundation that their next step is to convert to these neurotransmitters. The nice thing about that is these amino acids are not, again, pushing or stimulating. They're a tool that your body can use if that's what your body needs. And if you have enough of a specific neurotransmitter, your body's going to use this for some other pathway, okay? So we look at these amino acids essentially as like, these are the wood for the campfire and the paper for the campfire, right? The next step is we've got a fire going and things are good. And then there's 2 herbs that we use and enjoy, Schizandra and holy basil. Both of these herbs are adaptogens. So everything that we talked about a few moments ago about adaptogens is true of these 2 herbs. Within the world of adaptogens, each adaptogen has something that it's particularly good at, like some expertise. And so if we look at Schizandra, its expertise is emotional stress or distress. It's a really wonderful herb for anybody that has some emotional stress in their life. It's a wonderful caregiver adaptogen. Right? So anybody that's caring for another individual, you feel that stress as well. Sometimes you may not feel like you are, you may not even think you're carrying that stress, but we do. So it's a wonderful herb there. Maybe I call this my every mom in America adaptogen, right? Yeah, moms give up their lives for years for their family and sometimes don't even realize what you're doing to yourself. And then holy basil is that adaptogen for emotional strength. Holy basil is like that best friend that comes over and you say, no, I'm fine, I don't want to go out, I don't want to do anything, and they know better, right? And they come over to your house and they get you up off the couch anyway and take you out. That's holy basil. It's emotional strength. It's a good support. So all of those ingredients are in Enjoy, and I want to talk about Addis for a moment, and then I'll talk about when you would use one versus the other, and I can take any questions you might have on them. Addis is kind of the partner product to this. To Enjoy. Addis is for anxiety, ADHD, focus, concentration. So with Enjoy, I'm kind of down here, and I need to come up to be balanced. With Addis, my brain is just going like crazy. I'm up here. I need to come back down to balance. So we're starting at the opposite end of the spectrum, but we need to end in the same exact spot, and that's what we're working on here. So a sense of calm, clarity, and focused thoughts is what we're working on. Interestingly enough, we start in exactly the same place with B vitamins. Now, we tend to see different deficiencies in B vitamins, so we've got a few different ones here, B1, B6, and niacinamide, but the purpose is exactly the same. These are your catalysts to start that chain of reactions. And then we're using choline. Choline is a fat. So choline, your body will convert to a number of different types of fat, all of which are essential for brain health. And so I like the idea of giving in this formula just a little bit of I call it a foundational fat that your body can use in a variety of different ways. Fats are essential for keeping those brain cells soft and spongy so information can easily flow in and out. And then GABA is your main calming neurotransmitter. We use just a little bit of GABA here, not enough to put you to sleep. A higher dose of GABA will definitely make you tired and sleepy, but when you're anxious and have ADHD and kind of focus issues, we give a little bit of GABA and it just brings you down to normal. So this formula will not put you to sleep during the day. And then magnesium, another foundational nutrient. And magnesium is in there for a variety of reasons. One, as I'm seeing here in the slide, it's involved in serotonin production. But we know that magnesium, when you're anxious and you're kind of ramped up, your body is going to use or burn up more magnesium. No different than your car uses more gas when you speed down the expressway, right, than when you're going the speed limit. So we want to make sure that we replace some of those magnesium stores in the body. Magnesium is going to help our muscles relax as well. So it's really important to have some good magnesium for people that are anxious. And then 5-HTP, the same amino acid that we used in Enjoy, is here also, because whether you have depressive feelings or anxious feelings, a deficiency in serotonin is common both ways. And so that is the most effective way to produce serotonin in the brain. And then the other amino acid is L-theanine. We switched this one up a little bit from Enjoy. L-theanine comes from green tea, improves the mood, reduces stress, and what I love about it is it increases relaxation and alertness at the same time. Now, and those almost seems like those two things would contradict, but if you think about the feelings of anxiety, right, and ADHD and focus issues, we need you to relax a little bit. And when you do, you're actually much more clear and alert. So you're just kind of coming down to a place of being able to focus and relax. Pay attention and focus on what's going on in front of you. So L-theanine increases alpha brain waves. Alpha brain waves are present when we're in a state of relaxation. That doesn't mean sleep, it just means relaxed, okay? This slide is interesting, just so you can see the pathway of 5-HTP. There's that red dot in the middle. I don't know if you could read it from the back. That's the amino acid that's in both of these formulas. It's the direct precursor to serotonin, which is where it goes on the right. Part of the reason I want to show this to you is from serotonin, we drop down to the left and we produce melatonin, okay? This is why, whether you have anxiety or depression, generally you also have sleep issues. Because if you're deficient in serotonin, you're not going to produce melatonin. If you don't produce melatonin, your body doesn't know when it's time to go to sleep. Okay? So rather than giving you melatonin, I would rather give you 5-HTP, which is the building block so you can produce serotonin, and now you feel better. And if you have serotonin, then you can produce melatonin in the amount that you need. So that's part of the reason I love the idea of giving your body this. It's the nourishing part of that. If I give your body what it needs, your body will do what it's supposed to when it's supposed to. Rather than me coming along saying, well, I think you need melatonin, so I'm going to try this, and then we'll experiment, and I'm not really sure, right? So melatonin is one of those things that I would rather not use unless I know for sure we absolutely need to. And in most cases, 5-HTP does the trick. We've got two herbs in this formula as well. Bacopa is the first one. Bacopa, many folks will tell you that this is an adaptogen, but there's a few herbalists that will disagree. I'm more in the adaptogen camp than the non-adaptogen camp, but I just to point out it's one of those that not everybody agrees. What I can tell you is it's very adaptogen-like. We know it's a brain tonic, and it has a ton of research and studies on brain function. Not just for focus and concentration, but it helps to remove amyloid plaque from the brain. It's anti-inflammatory. It even has some pretty amazing studies for from some serious central nervous system issues, Parkinson's, stroke, and depression, and that type of thing. One of the other things that I love about Bacopa is that it also calms the physical things that go along with anxiety. And so while it's excellent for the brain, it relaxes the cardiovascular system and the bronchioles, right? So when we're anxious, our blood pressure is up, heart might be racing, we feel like we can't even breathe, right? Because we're so tight and tense. Bacopa just kind of relaxes all of that, lets it wash away. Bacopa is not a sedative. It won't put you to sleep during the day. It just allows you to kind of let go all of that. It's a really, really wonderful herb for anxiety because of what it does for the brain and what it does physically. And then the last herb in here is Schizandra. Same adaptogen that we use in Enjoy. Schizandra is your adaptogen for emotional stress, right? It is absolutely the right one to use in both of these formulas and does a fantastic job of helping you just kind of calm down and relax. This is part of the reason that I use Enjoy, not just for anxiety, ADHD, and focus and concentration, but I call this my caregiver formula. So what I talked about with Shazandra, if you're that individual that you're the one that's always caring for somebody else and fixing their issues, or if you're that mom, of course, always taking care of your family, a lot of times I find that those individuals are always saying, I'm fine, I don't have any issues, I'm doing just fine. And then they start using at ease and they're like, oh my goodness, I have no idea. You know, the way you'll feel on that is you'll feel a sense of calm that you didn't know was possible, and you'll also feel an increase in energy that you didn't know you needed, okay? Because when our body is balanced and we modulate stress, energy is the natural result of that. So no stimulation is needed. We don't need more caffeine. What we need to do is modulate stress. And when we protect our brain and our body against stress, we simply feel better. Okay, we have more energy throughout the day. So one of the first questions that I get is people that say, well, I have anxiety and depression. Do I have to use both of these formulas, right? And the answer to that is no, you do not. You just need to choose the right one. So how do you do that? Because it is very common for anxiety and depression to go together, right? But almost always one of those feelings is more dominant than the other. So like for my mom, it was anxiety that over time kind of turned into some depression. But for her, anxiety was dominant and core for her. Other individuals, it might be the depression that comes first and you're feeling that, you're really down. So if you're down and you need to come up, and there's also some anxiety with that, that's fine. Use enjoy. That's the one to help bring you up. If you're all the way up here and you can't focus and you can't think and there's just too much going on, then at ease is the right formula for you. And if you're sitting here and you can't decide right now after I just said that, I promise you it's at ease. Okay? That's guaranteed. Every once in a while I'll use both formulas together, but to be honest, it's probably less than 5% of the time. And I never start there. I'll only go there maybe after a month or two if I feel like there's just too much going on with somebody. But usually one of the two will fix the issues. Any questions there? Next is at ease PM. At ease PM is for sleep, right? Because whether it's anxiety or depression, there's a good chance that you're struggling with sleep. And so we made a formula that either one of those individuals can use. So this can be used with either at ease or enjoy. It's a formula that is going to kind of give your body one more dose of the building blocks so we can create balance with neurotransmitters before we go to bed. And then we added some herbs in here, California poppy, hops, and lemon balm. Those three herbs as a combination are unbelievable for calming the brain and the body, helping you get a deep sleep and stay there through the night. They work the first night, and you won't wake up in the morning feeling groggy. Really, really wonderful herbs. If you are only struggling a little bit with sleep, you don't necessarily have to use at ease PM, by the way. At ease and enjoy will both help with sleep, right? Because if both of those formulas are going to help to bring balance to serotonin, which is what we need to produce melatonin, it's very possible that at ease or enjoy is all that you need, right? But if you're an individual and you're saying, you know what, I really do struggle with sleep, I haven't slept well in a long time, or you're just saying, you know, I don't want to wait, I want to feel better fast, this will speed the process up, okay? So if you have tough sleep issues, then I definitely encourage you to add this. And this is just one capsule, half hour to an hour before bed. And once you get more normal on those sleep-wake cycles, right, so you're sleeping better at night, waking up feeling a little bit better during the day, when those cycles are normalizing, the first thing you'll stop using will be at ease PM. You can stay on at ease during the day or enjoy as long as you need to. Those are both designed as long-term products for folks that need that long-term support. All right, Brain Awakening. Brain Awakening, actually, this is Dr. Janice's favorite product in the line. This is a formula for cognition. A lot of times when we think about the brain, people talk about focus or concentration or memory, but our brains have a lot more going on than just that. So the brains are when you're talking about cognition, there's learning, there's thinking, there's problem solving, there's spatial recognition. There are all kinds of things that the brain is doing beyond just the ability to remember, okay? And so when we're looking at brain health, one of the things that we know, another small piece of bad news, that our brains were optimal at age 25 or so, and then from that point on, our brains tend to shrink just a little bit, right, over time. The part of the brain that's shrinking is the synapse. So simplified brain structure, we have a brain cell, which is a neuron. Those are connected by synapses, which are kind of like a wire, if you will. And those synapses lose their density as we age or as cognition declines. When the density to those synapses reduces, that's where we have a hard time thinking and remembering and recalling or even making decisions the way we used to. The beautiful thing is we have found ways to restore the density to the synapse. So that's where we'll start here. And we do it with magnesium. We have known for many, many years of the importance of magnesium throughout the body. Magnesium is involved in over 300 different biochemical reactions throughout the body. The other thing we know about magnesium is probably the #1 mineral that I can say that we are all deficient in. And I realize maybe that's an exaggeration by one of you, but probably not. You can pretty well say all of us have some level of deficiency of magnesium in particular. The newer information to us is understanding how dependent our brains are also on magnesium. That's new. We didn't know that, 30 years ago. This is new within the last 15 or so years. This research started by a Chinese medical doctor who was studying brain health. And what he saw is that as cognition declined with age, that it was directly correlated with the level of magnesium in the brain. And then he further found out that there's only one form of magnesium in the brain. It's a form called magnesium L-threonate, which is not a form that anybody had ever taken before, right? We were all focused on magnesium citrate and glycinate and on and on. And so we know that there is a blood-brain barrier, right? We've heard that our body protects the brain, and so only certain things can cross this blood-brain barrier and get up into the brain. And that's what happens with magnesium. The only chelating agent that has the right key to cross that blood-brain barrier is the threonate. So let me give you just a little example of a chelating agent to make sure we understand minerals. So magnesium needs somebody or something to pick it up and carry it from the digestive system to the bloodstream, right? And that's a chelating agent. So you kind of look at a chelating agent as the guy who picks your suitcase up for you, right? And some of them are better than others. And some of those guys have a key for one spot to get in, and some of those guys have a key for another spot to get in. So in the body, different chelating agents, actually using formulas that have multiple chelating agents is actually a positive thing for us, because you're going to get a handful of guys with your suitcase with keys to different areas of uptake into the bloodstream from digestion. But with the brain, there's only one key that gets across to the blood-brain barrier, and that's magnesium L-threonate. What we found is that when we take this in a capsule form, within 6 hours, we can trace this into the brain. That's how fast it goes there. Our body doesn't use this form anywhere else in the body. It only uses it in the brain. So when you start using magnesium L-threonate, don't stop taking your other magnesiums. We call those body magnesium. This is brain or neural magnesium. They actually are different, okay? So there's quite a few things that magnesium L-threonate does. At its core, magnesium L-threonate restores the density to the synapse. That's pretty remarkable. Actually, the first study that caught my attention on this was a study where they were checking short and long-term memory on a healthy population group of 30-year-olds. And that caught my attention because I've seen all kinds of studies. I would expect them to do them as we get a little bit older. But to have a healthy population group of young people, and the improvement in short and long-term memory was really dramatic. And so this is another study that also you can look at and you see the difference. On the far left, you see only a few green dots. That's the control group, and that essentially shows the synapse density or activity in the brain. After 2 weeks on magnesium L-threonate, that center bar, you can see how much change the density to the synapse is in just 2 weeks, which makes sense because, again, we know that if you take it in a pill form, within 6 hours, it'll go up into the brain. So we can restore synaptic density in a very short period of time. We combine that with a mushroom called lion's mane. Lion's mane also has lots of study on focus and concentration and memory. It increases nerve growth factor. It's neuroregenerative. But part of the reason that I love lion's mane in this formula is because lion's mane has this unique ability to make sure that when your neuron, that brain cell, is being created, that the structure is healthy and normal. Okay? And so our neurons are dying off every day and being created every day. Lion's mane has the ability to make sure that the neurons that we're creating, the structure is healthy and normal. sometimes we may not be thinking about like the structure of a nerve, right? But the structure of a nerve is just as important as the structure of, say, your arm, right? If your arm is broken, the structure isn't right and it doesn't work. The same thing is true of every cell in the body. When our body creates a cell that is not a healthy structure, we produce immune cells to kill those cells off. But the more healthy structure cells that we can produce, the healthier our body is. Lion's mane has this ability to make sure that our neurons that we create are healthy and normal in their structure. Okay, so when we combine lion's mane, working on the neuron, with magnesium L-threonate, which is restoring the density of the synapse, all of a sudden our brain is working really, really well again. Okay, and then we add one last ingredient to that called amla. Amla is an Ayurvedic herb or an Indian herb that actually was the first or the original in Ayurvedic medicine. And back then they talked about amla as having the ability to cure all diseases. And I love it when a healing tradition makes a crazy statement like that, right? I mean, obviously that's an exaggeration. No herb is going to cure all diseases. But I just want to know, why did they say that? What were they thinking? I have tons of respect for Ayurvedic medicine. And as you look into it more, you realize that there's actually lots of studies on what amla can do throughout the body. There's a slide here that it protects the brain, which is the reason we're using it in this formula, but it's good for the heart and the liver, the immune system. It's anti-inflammatory. It's also adaptogen-like. It is not an adaptogen, but it is adaptogen-like. And you'll see that term used for some herbs that seem to have a lot of adaptogen qualities, but maybe not all of them. But what's really unique about amla is it is a potent antioxidant. And so in the antioxidant world, it's known as a cascading antioxidant. So essentially an antioxidant, its job is to go into our body and quench a free radical. A free radical is something that damages our cells. So, all right, so these antioxidants go and they grab these free radicals, and then they have to go back to the liver and they get regenerated, and then they can go back in the body and grab one more free radical. And so it's kind of back and forth all day, and that's what antioxidants do for us. But a cascading antioxidant like amla has the ability to go out in the body and stay active, quenching free radicals one after another after another. Now, after a long period of time, it will go back to the liver for regeneration. It's just many times more active in the body. And so that's part of the reason that amla will, quote unquote, cure all disease, is essentially it protects our body from all kinds of diseases because it's a potent antioxidant. So we put it in here because, as it says, neuroprotective, but it protects the brain against oxidative stress, damage, and plaque buildup. So we're working on the neuron, we're working on the synapse, and we're protecting the brain against damage. Okay, crave sap is the last one we're going to talk about tonight. This essentially is going to work as a formula to help our body when it comes to blood sugar balance, but also our brain. Our brain is absolutely involved in the blood sugar swings, and I'll explain why or how in just a moment. But first of all, sugar consumption is a problem, right? Actually, because I spent my entire life in the aisles of a health food store, people ask me all the time, you know, what's some good health advice that you would give us? If there was a couple of things to do, what would you do? And I say I've got just one piece of advice, really, if that's what you're looking for, and that would be to cut out sugar. We've got to stop eating sugar. On average, we're consuming 142 pounds of sugar a year. The American Heart Association, while I don't really talk much about the things that they say say that we should be consuming maybe 22 pounds of sugar a year, which probably is relatively accurate, maybe even just a little high still, but we're consuming 7 times more than what the American Heart Association says we ought to consume. If you follow that chart all the way to the very far left, I know you can't read the numbers, but the far left is the 1820s when we were consuming about 6 pounds of sugar in a year, right? Sugar was extremely expensive. We couldn't afford sugar. It was definitely a once-a-year treat, maybe twice, right? It was just not something that we consumed. But today, no problem, 142. Part of the reason for that is I've got 56 legal names for what sugar is on the screen, and I haven't listed all of them. I know there's more. I've got to go back to the drawing board and add more here. So it is really difficult for individuals to know that they're even consuming some things that are sugar, because a lot of these words don't even look like sugar. So if we look at the blood sugar cycle, this is what it ought to look like in our body. We should eat a balanced meal, and blood sugar should come up, and over the course of a few hours, it should come really nicely and glide and land right at baseline, right? And then we should be hungry again, and we should eat a snack or our next meal. This is what the cycle ought to look like. But it looks like this for most of us. We eat a meal that is not balanced. It's high in those 56 different types of sugars at 142 pounds a year, and our blood sugar spikes, right? So when blood sugar spikes, what's interesting is our body has a solution for that. If our sugars are high, what does our body do? Creates insulin, right? And so it's not a problem. We'll just create more insulin because we ate too much sugar. But the problem is when we consume too much insulin, and it was from a diet that was not balanced with the proper the proper carbohydrates and fats and proteins, but just high in sugar, that insulin is able to do its job really effectively. And the thing that's interesting about insulin is insulin doesn't know when it reached baseline. Right? It doesn't know that. All the insulin knows is that it has the job to do, and it's going to stay active for a couple of hours. And so, it takes blood sugar past baseline, I'll say after an hour or so, but it still has time on the clock, if you will. So it continues to work. And now your blood sugar is below baseline, which is now a feeling of hypoglycemia, right? When we're below baseline, our body doesn't have a solution for that. And our bodies are always going to fight to balance. So what happens when we have low blood sugar is our body tells our brain, hey, we've got a problem here. I still have insulin that's active in the bloodstream. My blood sugar is already low. I can't live like this. I need you to fix the problem. And your body tells your brain this information. Your brain's like, oh, that's important. Thanks for telling me. And I know exactly what to do, right? So your brain tells you to go eat sugar and go eat it now. And I don't care if it's cookies or chips or cake or candy. I don't care what it is. And I'll tell you what, if you don't listen, I'm going to get angry, I'm going to get upset. I might even throw myself on the ground. I might say a few things I don't mean, right? That's what our brain tells us. We've all felt that. And we respond, and we eat sugar, and our blood sugar comes up, and we feel so good, right? For about another minute, 47 seconds, until we start that process all over again. This is the most damaging thing that we do to our bodies. So when I'm talking about stressors, this as a stressor is the most damaging thing we do in our body. We've got to stop this cycle. So we start with a patented extract of 2 seaweeds. This extract is known as NC2, and it's standardized for polyphenols, which are some of the antioxidant properties in the seaweed. This is the first study that caught my attention on NC2. It was a study where they consumed NC2 30 minutes before eating white bread. So by no means a balanced meal, just high simple carbohydrate. Very first dose, we had a 48% reduction in the blood sugar spike. 1 dose, first time. Unbelievable. I gotta be honest, I've been doing this my whole life. I've never seen anything work like this before in my life. I don't believe in magic pills, but this very well may be one of them. So, is the study repeatable? So the next study that they did, it wasn't white bread this time, still not a balanced meal, but the reduction was 39% reduction. Tested a few other markers this time. The next one was insulin production. You can see that went down 7%. This makes sense. If I don't have the same spike, I don't need to overproduce insulin. The next marker is insulin sensitivity, which went up 5%. This is also logical. If I didn't overproduce insulin, my body is able to utilize the insulin that I did produce effectively. So the sensitivity to that insulin increased. So essentially, it's normalizing that cycle. There are lots of studies on NC2. We've shown that we have the ability to lower A1C markers, which is a marker for heart attack and heart disease. And why would something for blood sugar affect the heart? It's the blood sugar swings that actually cause those issues in the heart, okay? So metabolic syndrome is a precursor to heart disease. We've also shown the ability to reduce fatty liver, actually in a very short period of time. Fatty liver is also a symptom of metabolic syndrome, where we have these blood sugar swings. All kinds of different markers come back to normal when you balance that blood sugar process. I'm going to show you one study that is the most recent one that came out in NC2. So the first 2 studies were 1 dose first time, right? So we know it works fast. This is a study they did on pre-diabetics in a 6-month period. So what we know about pre-diabetes, and so these are folks in 2 different categories of pre-diabetes. The one on the right is a little bit worse or closer to diabetes. What we know about this group is if they don't change their diet or something about their lifestyle, these folks are going to become diabetics. That road is about as crystal clear as you've ever seen anything in life. Prediabetes leads to diabetes. And so the only change in these groups was the inclusion of NC2 or a placebo. They standardized very, very closely with the diet, so no diet or changes were made in any of these groups. In 3 months, you see 4 people in the NC2 group going towards normal. One of them actually in 3 months has normal blood sugar. The placebo in 3 months, we've got 2 folks that are heading towards diabetes. The big swing happens here in 6 months. Look at the NC2 group. In 6 months, we're taking pre-diabetes with no changes to the diet. Now, I don't advocate that, right? If we've got a diet issue, we need to fix that too. But that is unbelievable what this does to the body in 6 months. And then here's the placebo group. We've got 5 more individuals heading towards diabetes, which tells you that they chose the right group. They're going exactly the way that it's predicted that they would go. So what we, this is just some of the other markers. So what we add to NC2 in our CraveStop formula is Chromin X3+. This is a chromium extract. It's a patented extract of chromium. What we want with chromium is good absorption and stability. So chromium is essential in our body, but the wrong form of chromium also causes cancer in our body, right? Chromium-6 is the Aaron Brockovich chromium, that was in the water supply. And what we know is chromium as a mineral is not stable. It's very unstable, so we want to be careful with this. So this patented extract combines chromium with shilajit and amla, again, interestingly enough. And those 2 ingredients do 2 things. 1, they stabilize it, and 2, they increase the absorption. It's a really wonderful extract. And then we also combine the formula with Genema sylvester. This is an important combination with NC2. NC2's activity is mostly in the gut. It's known as the in phase of blood sugar balancing. Genema sylvester is active in what's known as the out phase, which is blood sugar that's already in your bloodstream. So when we add Genema sylvester to NC2, we're able to work on that cycle throughout the entire cycle. And then the last ingredient is American ginseng. This is an adaptogen. Okay, so again, everything we said about adaptogens is true of American ginseng, and while this does really all kinds of wonderful things in our body, it is excellent at nourishing the pancreas and things to balance blood sugar. So when it comes to blood sugar balance, we absolutely want to modulate stress, because when do we want to eat, right? When we're stressed. So if we can give you something to help with stress, it's also going to help that craving. And at the same time, if we have wild blood sugar swings, we absolutely want to modulate the stress that causes in our body. So that's what this formula will do. And at the end of the day, it's our goal to help everybody feel better, right? So we can live better lives. So that's absolutely our goal at REDD Remedies. So they put all of the formulas on sale tonight. So if you have questions, I will stay up here or answer questions as long as you like. Everything is on sale. And I know we have some of these little gifts that I brought to give away. So maybe, I don't know where Steve disappeared to, but if we can get them to come back up, and I'll answer any questions there might be in the meantime. And thank you all for coming tonight. I appreciate it. Yes?
Hi, I have a question in regards to the adaptogens. So I've taken a few of them individually and didn't have a lot of success, but I also take supplements and different supplements. So is it possible that there may be particular supplements that block some adaptogens from working better in your body, or maybe I don't know?
So the question is, I've used some adaptogens, but not with a lot of great success. So is it possible that food or other supplements might block their abilities? There aren't any foods or other supplements that are going to interact in a negative way with an adaptogen. It's hard, I guess it's hard for me to know why the adaptogen didn't quote unquote work. We know we're all unique individuals. Probably the best thing that I can tell you is part of the reason that I like formulas. So everything we do is designed for a very particular problem, right? And so I know that there are some adaptogens that are better than others for specific conditions, and so we start there. And one of the other things I'll maybe just throw into that is, if you look at our formulas, I don't include every possible herb in that formula that could work for that. And so it's really common for people to say, well, why didn't you use this herb, you know, or why didn't you use this nutrient? And it's just like, you know, making soup, right? With soup, we got all kinds of spices that we can use to make soup, but that doesn't mean it's going to make good soup. And it's part of the thing that's different about us is when Stacy, a master herbalist, puts that formula together, it's like a master chef, you know, and you've had soup that's out of this world soup, and it's nothing like the soup that I'm going to make if you come to my house, you know? And so that's kind of the difference in the formulas, is that they are designed specifically for the function that we put them together for, and they are designed to nourish, to support, and then to create balance in your body. And you might find it's a very different experience for you. And then the other thing I could say is, you know, the other thing that's not regulated is the quality of ingredients and herbs. There's no way as a consumer for you to know that, you know, I'll say this magnesium is different than this magnesium. And they might even be the same chelating agent. You might have a magnesium citrate and another magnesium citrate, and one of those might be better than the other. And it's true, it just depends on how properly and well chelated they are in the back end, and none of that stuff ever makes it to a label. It's part of the reason that in our industry, part of it's frustrating. I mean, I definitely know it's frustrating as a consumer, but it's part of the reason that a relationship with a local store is important, and it's important that Steve then has a relationship with us so he kind of knows who to trust. And I hate to say it that way, but there is a lot of trust that's needed kind of in our industry still. And so, you know, buy from people that you know, buy from people that are focused on getting the results that you're intending to get. Good question. Yes, sir.
So, in the latest case, would it make sense to do like a detox or a cleansing before you start something like that?
Great question.
Because you may see better results.
Yeah, so should you do a cleanse or a detox before? The answer is yes. I mean, we are toxic. I don't talk about it so much in this talk, but I'm really focused on liver health. As your liver goes, so does your health in so many ways. Our liver is a filter for our body, but the part that we miss all the time is the liver is a manufacturing plant. It's a processor, right? It takes things that are not active and useful in our body and converts them to forms and things that our body can use, right? And if the liver is stressed in the filtering job, it is not going to process well, right?
They warn you, in the name of that organ, they warn you. They call it the liver. I mean, what else?
That's right, yeah.
So it's
Yep.
Yep.
Liver is essential. Cleansing the body is essential for sure. I'm a huge advocate. Good point. That very well may be. Any other questions? Otherwise, I think Nick's got some stuff for us.
Yeah. All right, guys. Can you please give a big hand to Alan for coming all the way from Chicago and giving us all this important answers, and of course, I just want to thank him. And I know his product from years and years, and the best one I mean, of course, I came to learn more about his product right now, but the best one is, which I always recommend to my customer, is Gouge. If anybody has uric acid buildup, the toe, remember the toe, we get that pinching nerves and like calcium deposits, that is your uric acid. And I really thank Alan for giving that product. Over the years, has such a tremendous results with my customers giving that product, and they love it. And now my second best would be the Crave, which you already talked about, and At Ease will be my second to go products right now. Just want to let you know that we have some great gifts actually. And the first 10 people who came in, we're gonna give them, who have the receipt of the thing which I gave it to them, they're gonna get the gift from Alan and his company. I just want to thank him again. And the other thing is, all the products which we talk about is 25% off right now. And if we run out on any product, we can give you a rain check for the next time. But we always have great price right now. What are the prices right now? We have 25% off on that. So there'll be a great price for today event only. And the other thing is, since we have a lot of questions about cold season is coming up right now, immunity. So we have great products in the store. And of course, as you guys know, our cold virus and flu formula, every year we are selling more and more word of the mouth 2 days, your cold and flu is gone in 2 days, guaranteed. Taking 2 old droppers, of course, Steve knows about that. And every year we are seeing that people are getting more and more. I would just recommend this product for everybody. Extra vitamin C, of course, your probiotic. So just getting your immune support better before the season hits, before you know you're gonna get sick. Of course, now and then we all get sick. The thing is just to immunize and just get your immune support going on. So even if, just in case you get sick, you're not just gonna be on the bed for like 3-4 days. We just want to get you back as soon as possible. So just to let you know, we have the brochures up here for the cold and flu. So if you guys just want to have a look, we have enough supplies. Matter of fact, just a few days ago, we ran out. We had 67 people in the waiting list. That what happened to cold and flu is that's important. And of course, for the season, you're gonna have more. Any questions you have? I think so. We already answered the question because the time is running out. We're expecting more people today, but due to the traffic and any other unexpected circumstances, they didn't able to get a chance to come back. But I just want to thank you guys for coming back to the store and giving just coming back for you guys. Actually, we do all these things for you guys. We just need a good word of the mouth, to your friends and family. And it's a family-owned health food store. It's not a chain. So we'd like to see you guys more up here and support us. And thank you everybody for coming down up here. And one word from Steve.
Just clarify that. So we actually priced the item already at 25 off right now.
Yes.
So you will see the price. Most people have the loyalty card. If you don't have it, get it. It's free. That will allow it to make sure that it comes up right. And with that CVF formula, how many people here are familiar with that CVF, the cold and flu formula?
Oh,
It is.
the cold and flu formula.
We just got in 1,000 bottles yesterday. If that's any indication. And I have a feeling we're going to be out by next month. The way it's going. It's every year. We're seeing a curve that just goes like this. We cannot keep it in stock. We had 283 bottles literally about 3 weeks ago. I said, I hang enough. I turn around. I get a panic call from Jason here. It says, we are running out. We need to order now. I called them up, said I need a rush order, and we just got in 1,000 bottles yesterday. So this stuff works.
I have not had a cold in 3 years. And I'm around children who constantly are sick. I'm around the parents and they're all sick. And I am perfect for this.
And I did not pay her to say that.
And I travel with that in my handbag because what it does, it helps me with the mucus. At my age, I always feel like there's a lot of mucus back there.
Yep.
And as I
Clears it
go through
right
the
up.
day,
Yep. So I had a woman, she was just telling me just today, she keeps one in her kitchen, one in her car, and one in her workplace.
yes,
I said, I
travel
beat you.
with
I keep one even in my bedroom and one in probably the bathroom. But the product is incredible. Word of mouth is exactly.
Thank you guys.
How do you take it? Okay, so normally we don't recommend you taking it every day, and the only reason for that is because it is so effective that you want to save something that's so effective for when you really need it. But let's say you were at your neighbor's house and they were not looking too healthy. You come home. You don't do it in front of them because that will insult them. You take a little bit, and for the most part, you'll be like, you'll forget that you actually were with somebody. That's it. That's pretty much it. I sometimes do that when I see a customer like that. The minute they walk out, I go to my desk, I take a little bit. I think I need to protect myself. That's pretty much what I am.
And if you guys want to know how it works, my table is right here. You can anytime you can come down. I can give you a sample to try right away. I have my own mixes. My customers, they know about it. So I can give you right away, and I give a couple of other oils. And right away, I'm not even kidding, within 10 minutes, you're gonna start feeling your sinuses being open up, the sore throat, it actually goes away. I have my couple of mixes out there, and it works almost immediately. I can guarantee you.
I've gotten rid of a full-blown flu, full-blown with temperature, body aches, burning eyes, name every symptom, where I was literally in the bed in 3.5 hours, twice so far. You sweat it out. By the time I wake up, it's soaking wet. The bed, everything. But I got nothing.
If you take it as soon as you feel like a little itch in your throat, it's literally, after years of using it, you would take one drop and that would be the end of it. You never know what's coming on to you.
Yeah.
It just disappears.
So a lot of people keep it in just with them. They say it's one of those things. You just keep it with
You
you.
have the sun,
So,
you drop it in.
so I just want to let you know only because this year I have a feeling it's going to be very bad. And the way I'm telling that is because the summer was very bad. We sold as many that in the summer as we normally do in the winter. First time ever. So I know that this year is going to be very, very bad season. The severity of it is going to be bad. It's going to get you right in the lungs this time. That whole lung.
You combine that with immune support from REDD Remedies from Alan, and I can guarantee you, you're gonna have a great winter without getting sick a lot. I can guarantee you that. And the ingredients, of course, you know.
The formulas are
really
awesome. These
obvious.
formulas are like one of the best that I've seen. So, all right. So,
All right, so.
Dave, wanna-
Who are the folks that get those?
okay. So who's got the
first 10
tickets?
who got the stickers?
Okay,
and
whoever
give
got them, you want to
I'd
give it
like
out?
Alan to give it to them, so I'll be just more than happy.
If you have a sticker, come on up.
Yeah, you can put it right here. Don't worry about that. Let me turn the lights on.